Vedmata AI's presentation is based on authentic texts, traditional commentaries, and extensive research. Study material on chapters 41 and 42 of the Brihad Parashara Horash Shastra is limited or scarce. Therefore, this video is not based on chapters 41 and 42, but on the topics described in chapter 43, Pindayu, the mathematics of breaths and the mathematics of longevity, lower and middle age, and their diagrams.
All right, so we're diving right in today. We're skipping all the generic introductions because we are jumping straight into an intense, totally research-backed exploration of what is honestly one of the most complex and, frankly, profound chapters of the Brihad Parashara Horash Shastra. We aren't just talking about basic predictions here. No, we are looking at the ancient algorithmic foundation of the human lifespan itself. This is literally where cosmic time maps directly onto human breath. It's fascinating stuff. So let's move forward and see how this all builds together.
Starting us off with Section 1, Pindayu base years. This covers shlokas 4 through 8.
Now, looking at the original Sanskrit, Pinda actually refers to the physical body, or even the embryo, right? And Ayu means longevity or lifespan. So here we have the original text for shlokas 4 through 8. If we break down the simple English translation, it basically dictates that planets contribute to our actual longevity based on their exaltation or debilitation, meaning it's all based on their strengths, their weaknesses, and their specific zodiac positions. Think about the philosophical meaning here for a second. It suggests that a human lifespan is literally a composite of cosmic energy. The planets aren't just, giant rocks floating out in space. In this text, they are literal timekeepers. When they're at their absolute peak cosmic strength, they grant the maximum breaths or years to a person. But when they're weak, that contribution shrinks. It's this absolutely perfect synthesis of astronomy and human destiny.
Okay, so let's look at the actual numbers. The text assigns a very specific, unalterable base number of years to each of the 7 traditional planets when they are in their degree of deep exaltation, basically their absolute peak. The Sun grants 19 years. The Moon? It actually gives the most at 25 years. Mars contributes 15, Mercury gives 12, Jupiter also gives 15, Venus offers 21, and Saturn contributes 20 years. These are the absolute maximum base values. You can kind of think of these numbers as the raw data in our longevity algorithm, before any real-world variables get applied.
But here's the crucial point. What happens when a planet isn't at its absolute peak? Well, the ancient sages applied a very strict geometric rule. If a planet's deep exaltation point represents its maximum contribution, its deep debilitation point, its absolute weakest spot, is exactly 180 degrees opposite in the zodiac. It's a straight line right across the sky. And when a planet hits this 180-degree mark of deep debilitation, its contributed years are exactly halved, no exceptions. So, for example, the Moon in deep exaltation gives its full 25 years, right? But in deep debilitation, exactly 180 degrees away, it gives precisely 12.5 years. It is just a perfectly linear mathematical scale of planetary power.
Moving on to Section 2. The mathematics of lower and middle ages. Because, let's face it, planets are rarely sitting at their exact perfect exaltation or debilitation points. So this section gives us the formula for calculating intermediate longevity.
And this is where things get really brilliant. This illustrates the rule of 3 mathematical process that's detailed in the text. Let's walk through it together. Step 1. You deduct the actual current position of the planet from its deep exaltation point. Step 2. Look at that result. If the product is less than 6 signs, you actually have to deduct it again from 12 signs. Step 3. Take that final distance you calculated and multiply it by the base years allotted to that specific planet we talked about earlier. And finally, Step 4. Divide that entire number by 12. The result you get is the exact unrectified planetary contribution to the native's age, literally down to the decimal point. Think of it kind of like calculating a prorated paycheck, right? You only get the exact value of the cosmic time you've worked for, based exactly on where that planet happens to be positioned.
All right, Section 3, Modifiers and Reductions, also known as rectifications. Because the universe is incredibly complex, and raw math rarely survives contact with reality without some adjustments. That's exactly what these modifiers are for.
Let's dive into the specific conditional logic of these reductions that the text outlines. The first major rule deals with combustion. If a planet is eclipsed or combust, meaning it comes way too close to the Sun, its contribution is instantly cut in half. Interestingly, though, Venus and Saturn are explicitly exempted from this rule, which is a fascinating exception. The second major rule is all about planetary enmities. If a planet is placed in an inimical sign, basically a sign ruled by its enemy, its contribution gets reduced by 1/3. But wait, there's an exception here too. If that planet happens to be in retrograde motion, this 1/3 reduction doesn't apply at all. It's really this beautiful, intricate system of checks and balances.
Now, another totally critical reduction is the Krorodaya Harana. This deals with malefic planets placed in the ascendant. And to calculate this specific reduction, the text uses a very precise mathematical constant, 21,600. Now, why that specific number? Well, think about it. There are 360 degrees in the zodiac circle and 60 minutes of arc in every single degree. 360 multiplied by 60 equals exactly 21,600 total minutes of arc in the sky. So the calculation requires taking the ascendant cusp, multiplying it by the malefic's base years, and then dividing by this massive cosmic constant of 21,600. I mean, wow. It so beautifully connects the microscale of a single human breath to the absolute macro scale of the entire celestial sphere.
Which brings us to Section 4, calculating Ayurdaya. So after all this math, how do we actually interpret the final result? Well, we categorize the human life into 3 distinct spans.
To figure out these categories, the text uses a system made up of 3 groups or pairs. Group 1 looks at the Ascendant Lord and the 8th Lord. Group 2 looks at Saturn and the Moon. And Group 3 looks at the Ascendant and the Hora Lagna, which is a highly specialized astrological point calculated based on the exact time of sunrise at the person's location. So we look at where these pairs are placed in terms of movable, fixed, or dual signs. Here's how it breaks down. If the planets in a pair are in movable signs, it points to a long life, meaning somewhere between 96 to 120 years. If they're in dual signs, it points to a medium life of 64 to 80 years. And if they happen to be in fixed signs, it dictates a short life of 32 to 40 years. The way it works is we analyze all 3 of these groups, and whatever the majority consensus is, that dictates the specific numerical bracket for the person's lifespan.
Moving on to Section 5, the Pinda U diagram and its application. Let's actually look at the practical side of applying this incredibly complex algorithm.
This specific Rashi, or horoscope chart, provided in our source material is exactly where the diagram of Pinda U years gets drawn out. By placing the ascendant, the sun, the moon, and all the other planets into their exact geometric houses, the astrologer visually maps out the math we just discussed. A planet's distance from its exaltation point, its proximity to the sun for that combustion rule, and its placement in specific sign types are all visually represented within this framework. This chart essentially becomes the physical interface for the entire Pinda U algorithm.
Okay, let's take a breath and summarize this entire intense process from Chapter 43, just to really lock in our understanding of it all. Step 1. You identify the base years for each planet, assuming they're in deep exaltation. Step 2. You apply the rule of 3 to calculate their exact unrectified years based on their true longitude in the sky. Step 3. You rigorously execute all the rectifications. That means halving for combustion, reducing by 1/3 for enemies, and applying that amazing 21,600 divisor for ascendant malefics. And finally, Step 4. You analyze the sign placements of those 3 specific pairs to finalize the Ayudaya into the short, medium, or long life brackets. And there you have it. That is the complete algorithmic translation of Pinda U.
We have covered a tremendous amount of ancient mathematics today, drawing directly from the deepest, most complex chapters of the Brihad Parashara Horashastra. When you realize that a mathematical constant like 21,600 minutes of celestial arc is used to calculate the exact duration of a human life, it really makes you stop and think. How do cosmic breaths mathematically intertwine with the exact minutes of our existence? Are we simply biological entities wandering through life, or are we, in fact, living mathematical equations written in the stars? It's something to think